joined by Mr. Gulzar Azad, who is the country head connectivity of Google India. Hi Gulzar, how are you doing?
Hi, Sufi. Very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. So we will be asking some interesting questions to you about your Indian current projects. Please share some things about Indian datascapes you just presented here in our conference.
It's an extremely exciting time right now in India.
Okay.
As I was talking this morning,
Mm-hmm.
India's data,
Yeah.
mobile data consumption has grown 32 times in just the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? The hockey stick curve is just
Yeah.
unimaginable. And of course, largely because of the investments that mobile operators have made, Reliance, Airtel, Vodafone, Idea, all of them have made in the 4G landscape, and now that's all beginning to show up.
Okay.
Prices have gone down. I think
Yes.
India has become the cheapest market in the world.
Uh-huh.
But as we see this, it's undoubted now that there is a huge demand there, latent demand, and that's still going to continue to grow. I believe 2 to 3 times year on year.
Okay.
But it's going to now become increasingly challenged. The increasing challenge is to see how do you serve this data demand in terms of infrastructure, in terms of
Yes,
backhaul.
yes.
And while there is so much of demand happening, the LTE speeds are still challenged in India. So India, in terms of ranking, is still below 100 when it comes to internet speeds, and I think there's a lot of headroom to grow there.
Yes, but how you were saying that India's connectivity actually penetration regarding the fiber is still low. It's below 1%. Our research shows.
Right.
So how you were going to cope up with this, and how we were planning to deploy or maybe some expansion plan in India? How we were currently coping with this challenge?
I think the fiber deployed to population ratio, as I think you were indicating, and I had it on the slide today, is 1/10 of China, is even less as compared to US, and that can and has to grow because now the data demand is clearly there.
Yes.
Supply has to catch up. A lot has to be done across the ecosystem. It's just not meeting the appetite of the users. It's just not the economics of the business, but also about policy, also about regulation. And you cannot put them in piecemeal form. The government and the industry has to come together and has to have a very comprehensive policy that executes in one go
Yes.
for fiberization to happen, from changing policy of residential buildings, from changing policy for right of way, to the controls that central and state governments and municipalities have over these ecosystems.
Yeah.
They all have to be affected in one go, I think. But that also calls for the fact that there's huge fiberization opportunity, and all the players in the fiber ecosystem can come and participate
part,
in this. But also 10x technologies are required to do that,
Yes.
because you cannot do the fiberization probably the way it was done in China and the way it was done in US,
Yes, it's different.
because of the ARPU levels here,
Yes.
because of the challenges of the geographical challenges,
Yes.
the democratic challenges also, because it's a democratic society.
Yeah.
Lots of permissions and approvals are delegated right to the municipalities.
Yes.
There's no one federal system controlling everything, all the resources. So I think keeping all that in mind, we have to bring in new technologies, and this is what I was talking about this morning, that there's need for, when it comes to, for example, GPON, there's need for bringing in technologies that can go make the fiber go longer, create more capacity per fiber, because you cannot always lay thick amounts of fiber, you cannot always lay large ducts. Also reduce the need for active equipment, reduce the need for maintenance and power, because all those factors are also challenged.
So maybe you can share some insights from your recent projects with the railway free Wi-Fi. So how are things going there? So
I think Railways Wi-Fi was a connectivity project that we started a few years back. It got launched on January 2016.
yes,
At which point Sundar, our CEO, and the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, announced that we'll do 400 railway stations together over this gigabyte network together, working together with RailTel, which is the public sector unit of Indian Railways. I think that mission is accomplished.
okay, totally.
And totally. and actually exceeded a few more stations out, so beyond the 400. So, and that got done, interestingly, before the committed time, so many months before.
Okay.
And it has been, successful beyond our expectations in terms of users and usage.
Okay.
So, you know, today, despite in the backdrop, all the 4G networks are being rolled out and very cheap data is available, people are using this in millions,
Okay.
and huge number of like terabytes of data
You're giving
we are seeing that happen every day on the network.
Okay.
And so this is, it has been interesting that we used an existing fiber, 45,000 kilometers of fiber that Railtel had, and then collaborated with them
Yes.
to bring up this Wi-Fi network. And that brings me to the fact that sometimes in these markets, it's important to drive frugal innovation.
Yes.
I would say this is a good example of frugal innovation, because
Yeah.
we couldn't go to every home to light up broadband. That's what operators will do over time.
Yes.
But at least we could stimulate the demand and bridge
the gap.
Bridge the gap, and what I like to call the experience divide.
Yes.
And by showcasing broadband
Yes.
to a entire mass of people,
Yes.
which is what is happening in railway stations. So from that point of view, that mission is successful. Now, there are going to be increasingly challenges for public Wi-Fi in terms of sustainability, because the model in the backdrop of very cheap data is very challenged. I think that has to be done, and it still is required, because multiple forms of channels of broadband are required to meet the demands. Public Wi-Fi has its place.
Yes.
I think it's going to be largely funded, by the public
PPP.
exchequer, by PPP models. It will have to be done as a complementary network
Yes.
if it has to be done sustainably. I think LTE, public Wi-Fi, 5G, and IoT, all of them will now sort of blossom in India over the next 5 years.
Yes. So, what is the average speed you get in stations free Wi-Fi?
The idea when we started the station was to, light up every station with Railtel's gigabit network.
Okay.
So all of these stations have full fidelity access.
Yes.
They,
But per
they-
user?
per user there is full fidelity access. Per user there is open access to the extent that the capacity of the backhaul can adjust every user for 30 minutes of high speed access.
Okay.
And
Oh,
then
it
there,
will be throttled?
after 30 minutes, they have low speed access.
okay.
It's not stopped, but they do
Okay,
continue, so that you could adjust for more users to come in.
Yes.
I think it's interesting, and then now what's also more interesting is that the team has now taken the project to other countries in the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, where
so
others?
I think Indonesia, Nigeria, Mexico,
Okay.
to launch, to name a few.
Okay, that's great.
And the project is expanding. But I think coming back to today's conversation that we had, fiberization needs, some of these technologies like GPON to evolve to
Yes.
solve for the economics and to solve for scale. So we were
Yeah,
talking about
also
Super PON
sustainability,
today,
yeah.
and I wanted to make a point that we are doing Super PON pilot in the US,
Yes.
and I think it's a relevant technology when it comes to India.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here for. I'm
Yeah.
hoping operators and OEMs, ODMs will take a look at that, and we'll be able to engage them.
Yes. Tomorrow you will be have this session, right, on Super PON? something?
Tomorrow, yes, my colleague who is the IEEE chair as well on that technology, and that
He'll
he's
be
driving the
explaining that.
standardization. He will explain it from an IEEE perspective.
Okay. So you have recently done collaboration with the Indian smart cities recently regarding the mobile 4G or 5G things, right? So can you please share a bit of that project?
The Smart City project was the extension of what we were doing in Railways Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So it's essentially taking the public Wi-Fi platforms product
Yes.
to people who are deploying smart city infrastructure,
Okay.
as in the fiber, the backhaul,
Yes.
the last mile access, and the Wi-Fi. And we partnered with one such city to make sure to sort of enable and facilitate public Wi-Fi across the city.
Okay.
That was to the extent of our initiative there. I think a lot more can be done on smart cities.
Yes.
Smart cities focus right now is to make sure that they have in India is that they have adequate planning and adequate funding to scale up some of these projects.
Yes.
So our point of view right now is to wait and see what happens there,
Okay.
especially in the backdrop of the election and the new government
yes.
coming up. We are hopeful that there will be a resurgence and continued focus to do that, and that will be an interesting area to engage in.
Seems it's really exciting journey for you in India. So
Right.
it's really great hearing from you. Thanks a lot for having you here. So we're really proud.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure.